Good evening. Good evening. We will now begin the public hearing. Today is Tuesday, February 7th, 2023, and the time is 6 o'clock p.m. My name is Sophia LaFrance Brooks, and I will be tonight's public hearing officer. Tonight's public hearing provides the public with an opportunity to comment on MTA's federal grant proposals for federal fiscal year 2023. The hearing is being held in a hybrid format with options to participate in person as well as virtually via Zoom's online platform. This hearing is being live streamed and recorded and will be available publicly on the MTA YouTube channel and the Capital Projects webpage at new.mta.info/2023-capital-projects-hearing. Card captioning and in-person American Sign Language interpreters are available at today's hearing. For our virtual attendees, to turn on card captioning, please use the CC button on the bottom of the screen. Sign language interpreters will appear on screen for all attendees. To hear the translated audio, use the interpretation button on the bottom of the screen. Please note that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. We ask that speakers keep their remarks to the 3-minute time frame out of respect for all other speakers. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. We will now start with opening remarks from Capital Funding Management.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephanie Delisle, and I am Director of Capital Funding Management for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. I would like to welcome you to the Capital Projects public hearing for federal fiscal year 2023. I will begin this public hearing by reading a prepared statement, which will become part of the hearing's public record. I would like to note that a transcript of this hearing will be made, and a copy will be supplied to each MTA board member. This hearing is an opportunity for the members of the public to comment on the proposals. Representatives of the MTA are here to listen, so representatives will be listening, not commenting. The panelists for tonight are Jillian Persaud for MTA Bus Company, Ralph Barone for Long Island Railroad, Michael McKenna for Metro-North Railroad, Peter Crociata for New York City Transit, and James Wardle for MTA Construction and Development Company. Also on the panel tonight is Sophia LaFrance Brooks, who is our hearing officer. I should emphasize public comment, including spoken comments today. All correspondence and emails will be transcribed and incorporated into the official and record and distributed to every board member. The MTA has conducted a community involvement and public information effort to encourage customer comment at this hearing. To make the public aware of this hearing, advertisements were published in 8 print media outlets, multilingual posters, digital and social media assets. Notice of this hearing was also posted on the MTA website along with multilingual translations. This is a public hearing being held by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, or MTA, in connection with requests to the United States Department of Transportation for federal financial assistance under the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, known as the FAST Act, and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law as appropriate. This federal assistance is for capital improvement projects for the systems operated by MTA, New York City Transit, Manhattan and Bronx Surface Transit Operating Authority, Staten Island Railway, MTA Long Island Railroad, MTA Metro North, MTA Bus Company, and for the MTA Construction and Development Company. Copies of the descriptions of projects from which specific requests for federal financial assistance will be selected have been available for inspection at numerous public locations throughout the surface area. In addition, copies of these documents were also available on the MTA website since January 3rd, 2023. At this hearing, an opportunity will be afforded to all persons and agencies interested in being heard with respect to the social, economic, environmental, and historic preservation impact of the projects, and to submit evidence and recommendations orally or in writing with respect to any aspect of this list of projects. Today's hearing is being held in accordance with federal requirements in order to qualify the projects for federal financial assistance. We are here today to seek comments on the proposed list of projects only. The projects in this hearing may be more than we ultimately seek funding for, and the MTA may or may not do any of these projects listed here with federal funds. The published list of projects contains capital improvement work in the following amounts for each agency: New York City Transit, including Staten Island Railway, $4.854 billion. Long Island Railroad, $1.028 billion. Metro-North Railroad, $1.588 billion. MTA Bus Company, $33.23 million. The total for the MTA is $7.504 billion. Anyone interested in the categories of work which are the subject of today's public hearing or the details of the individual projects can inspect copies of the description of projects which are available on the MTA's website. Section 5307 is a formula-based program from which a specified amount of federal funds is allocated to the urbanized area for each federal fiscal year. The MTA will make the final program of projects available on its website, new.mta.info/transparency/grant-management for Section 5307 funded projects when the FTA awards those grants. In federal fiscal year 2022, MTA received $815 million of Section 5307 funds for New York City Transit, Manhattan and Bronx Surface Transit Operating Authority, Long Island Railroad, Metro-North Railroad, and MTA bus projects. MTA will be submitting applications to obtain federal financial assistance from various sections of the FAST Act legislation and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Final amounts that will be received for federal fiscal year 2023 are not presently known. The requests to be made for federal financial assistance will incorporate individual projects into programs of work and will be submitted as appropriate following this public hearing in anticipation of federal funding that may be available under the transportation legislation under the following programs: Sections 5307, 5309, 5324, 5337, 5339, and 5340 of Title 49, Chapter 53 of the United States Code. Funds for transit use under Title I of FAST Act, also known as the highway portion of the legislation, and 49 U.S.C. 5300 of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. The final program of projects will be selected from the list of projects published in the legal notice of this hearing. Applications will be prepared and submitted to the U.S. DOT. MTA proposes to A, submit capital projects to request some or all of the Section 5307 funds for federal fiscal year 2023 that will become available. And B, submit some capital projects to request 5307 funds remaining from prior year allocations and adjustments to the Section 5307 program. In addition, MTA also proposes to A, submit projects for federal funds from the Section 5337 State of Good Repair funding category for federal fiscal year 2023, and B, submit additional projects in amounts sufficient to request federal fund balances from prior fiscal year allocations and grants within each of these fund categories, including fund categories under FAST Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law as appropriate, and for adjustments to these programs. The capital improvements to be progressed with these funds generally take place in the confines of the transportation systems of the MTA or the city, county, or state-owned property. Any property acquisition or relocation that may be required for these projects will be carried out in accordance with the appropriate provisions of law and regulatory requirements. The projects are not expected to have any significant adverse environmental impact. Should the U.S. DOT prepare a formal statement on the environmental impact of any of these projects, the availability of such a statement or statements from DOT will be made known by appropriate publication. The projects outlined in this public hearing conform to the Long-Range Transportation Plan for the New York Metropolitan Region and have been or will be endorsed by the Metropolitan Planning Organizations for the New York Metropolitan Region, for Orange County, and for Dutchess County as the product of continuing cooperative and comprehensive planning for all modes of transportation. Reduced fare privileges for the elderly, disabled, and Medicare users will be made available as required by federal law. All legal requirements relating to the elderly, disabled, and Medicare users will be met. In closing, I would like to emphasize that the financial aid that will be requested is essential to the implementation of the MTA's capital program. And again, for today's public hearing, the MTA representatives attending this hearing are here to listen to your comments regarding the proposed list of projects. We will not be responding to any comments today. As noted earlier, a transcript of this hearing will be distributed to each MTA board member. Thank you. I will now turn it over to the public hearing officer, Sophia LaFrance Brooks, to commence the public speaking session. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. There are 10 speakers registered to speak tonight. Speakers will be called in the order which they signed up. If you have joined the Zoom under a name that is different from the one you used when you signed up to speak, please identify yourself in the Q&A function with the name you used when you signed up. When you are called to speak, there will be a brief transition on your screen. Please make sure that once your screen updates, your camera and microphone are enabled before beginning your remarks. You will not be able to unmute or enable your camera until it's your turn to speak. Please remain patient until then. In the event you miss your name being called, we will call the list one more time after all speakers in attendance have been called the first time. By attending this virtual webinar, you are consenting to be recorded. Please be aware that there will be an auditory and visual cue to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Thank you for your patience and understanding throughout this in-person and virtual public comment session. Our first speaker is Mr. X, followed by Joe Bedar.
Again, you omitted some projects from this book you gave us, and I think it's time you stop doing that, because there are many projects that should be included. I stated within the last year, as I said, the two Westchester Avenue L's, which hold the 2, 5, and 6 trains, should be connected. There are no trains running on that street between Southern Boulevard and Whitlock Avenue. How long would it shouldn't take that long to build it. It's only a small stretch. That would be nice. Okay. 7th Avenue via the BD and E trains, and 57th Street via the NQ and R trains should be connected. They're right there. It's supposed to be connected to the 1 train. The 1 and E trains at 50th Street. Also 50th Street via the 6th Avenue line. You need to connect those stations. You have a better system if you do. Brooklyn Bridge via the 4, 5, and 6 trains. City Hall via the NR trains. Park Place via the 2 and 3 trains. They need to be connected. They're right there. No reason why you can't connect them. Those projects should be in the book. And also, years ago, the South Bronx Community Congress advocated for an elevator at the closest stations near Hostess College and Lincoln Hospital. They want to update about that. As far as I know, you excluded it from the book, and if you did, there's no excuse for that because we first advocated for over 2 years ago. Inexcusable. Sometimes that's inexcusable. It's inexcusable that the current MTA head, who could pass for Harrison Ford and David Letterman with a bigger nose and a smaller head, decides to hold a public hearing and then no shows. I saw him downstairs. So why is he up here? Is he hiding from me? Is he hiding from us? Is he running with his tails between his legs? Looks like Peter Calcutt, the devil's disciple, one of my early opponents. Sometimes that's inexcusable. In connection to the previous public hearing, you mentioned when speaker registration starts. In connection to this one, you didn't. You sent us upstairs at approximately 5:30. You detained me here for 15 minutes. Why? I don't know. If you detain me on the first floor, that's bad. You detain me on this floor, that's just as bad. Okay, the minute I come upstairs, you should be ready. Ready, willing, able, like the Doe Fund. And if you're not, you shouldn't be here. It's that simple. For you to cut into our time, what you've done in the past is inexcusable. For Harrison Ford and Dave Letterman to hold a public hearing and no show, it's also inexcusable. Just one question. Does MTA stand for Metropolitan Transit Authority, or does it stand for money thrown away? I'm beginning to think it stands for money thrown away. What I saw last Wednesday was a small joke. What I
Please
saw
conclude.
today is a bigger joke. Get it together. Take your time and do it right like the SOS band.
The next speaker is Joe Bedard, followed by Jesse Figueroa.
President Biden, Congress, Governor Hochul, Mayor Adams, MTA board members, my fellow human beings. My name is Joe Bednar. Yes, we are here to discuss federal capital resources and their proposed use by the MTA. You stand with annual revenue of $14 billion and an annual operating budget in 2022 of $19.4 billion. I am going to speak to the crisis of homeless and crime aboard the system and how you can spend a small fraction of your capital to fix it. What is the most valuable capital for any company? Human capital. It rises above steel, concrete, and technology. It is human employees and human customers coming together in a humane way to get from point A to point B. Let's review the human capital component of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. Authority, that's an interesting term. The definition of authority is the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. That's authority. This is disgusting. This is disgusting. This is piss on your subway floor. This is a suitcase and a stolen city bike on your subway. This is someone sleeping on my seat. addiction, urination, defecation, all aboard the MTA trains and stations. This is an MTA crisis. It is not a problem for NYPD to address and solve. The NYPD is of greater purpose above ground and not on your property. The MTA must operate as any other private business operates and is subject to loitering and criminal activity. Retail owners know this and implement private security. Bar owners know this and implement private security. You are a hybrid private corporation. What do these photos say about your company? They say you do not care. You do not care about the health and safety of your passengers, about the health and safety of your workers. You do not care about a plan of action to address the situation. You may say, well, we can't escort paying customers out of the system. You're right, you can't. But you can use your authority to not allow sleeping in the system. I am personally developing a plan, including appropriate proposed budget, to put private security in place at all stations and on trains. If anyone is interested in seeing my plan, my website is
Please conclude.
joemednar.com. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jesse Figueroa, followed by Parissa Alam. The next speaker is Parissa Alam. The next speaker is Albert Tomaso.
Sorry, excuse me, can y'all hear me?
Yes, Parissa?
Yes, sorry, did you hear what I said earlier?
No, I did not.
Okay, could you let me know if it's my turn to speak?
Sure, speak now.
Oh, okay, so hi, my name is Parisa, and I'm a high school student from Eastern Queens, and I attend Townsend Harris High School currently, and I'm in 11th grade. So I really wanted to attend this meeting on behalf of all like the high school students that do go use the MTA service, especially the bus service in Queens, because I feel like high schoolers are a bulk of like the people who do go on the bus. So I did like informally interview a lot of my classmates in school, and like I wanted to see what their own problems were with the bus system. And so yeah, so some of this is also like my own input. So one thing I saw was that like from the report that most of the money is being allocated to like subway and like the actual LIRR and Metro North systems. But I would like to appeal for maybe a few changes to the bus system, such as lower fare for those that have like financial difficulties. Like they could apply for a special card that would allow them to have like financial aid, and also like I guess more fair, like more transfers for high school students on their free cards. Also, more people wanted buses that were available in Queens in the morning, so that it would, if they missed a bus, they wouldn't have to wait for a really long time. More people also wanted buses to be less crowded in general in Queens, and like raise the bus capacity in Queens, because they felt like buses had little to no seats, and those that needed seats were always taken. And then they wanted bus schedules to be, and subway schedules to be, more frequent in general in New York City. And along with the increase in safety, as others had said before, I think that's also important. Safety for not only like bus riders, but also like at the stations themselves, to have safety there. And then also, this is more of my own input, but maybe there could be more subway stations in Eastern Queens as future projects, since it's sort of like a transportation desert, and there are like only a few bus routes where Queens connects to Long Island. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Albert Tomaso, followed by Scholar Hope.
Good evening. I want to thank the directors for your service. I know this is an unenviable job with infinite needs and limited resources to go around. I want to speak to your proposed suggestions of the Brewster Southeast Complex on the Harlem Line. I was excited to see these on the list of capital projects, as it's a station I use regularly and currently hold a parking pass to commute back and forth from here to Connecticut. This station complex is unique in that it's one of the few not located in a downtown area, and therefore has room to expand and increase commuter capacity, as it's also directly adjacent to the Interstate 84 corridor. Although details are not given of the new parking area, I want to express a hope and desire that it both expands from the current facility, which at least pre-pandemic was at capacity, and includes room for additional future expansion to accommodate increased commuters to hopefully take cars off the 684 corridor into the city. Furthermore, speaking to the needs of safety and cleanliness expressed earlier by Joe, I want to add that urination is a problem not only on the trains, but also in the station areas. The Southeast Station currently has an outhouse at the edge of the parking lot, but no dedicated bathroom facilities. Unlike some stops that are simply walk on, walk off, this station is also used to transfer between the electrified portion of the corridor and the diesel trains that run further up to Wasaic, and so it can include passengers waiting on the platform for 10, 20, 30 minutes or more. And so while I don't see station improvements listed here, I would express a hope that with the improvements to the parking and the rail complex, a station upgrade could also be included to account for these layover passengers, as well as to attract more commuters off the 684 corridor. Finally, I want to express a hope that as these plans move forward, electrification of the highly successful Harlem Line north of Brewster could also be included to continue to meet the climate goals of the greater New York region, to provide increased fast, frequent, and reliable service to this corridor, and to demonstrate a model that could be further applied to the New Canaan and Waterbury lines within Connecticut, to once again upgrade from the current diesel service to electric as we move into the next generation of commuter rail. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Skylar Hope, followed by Vincent Jenkins.
All right, so first off, I want to start by talking about ADA accessibility. Right now, only about 1/4 of the 472 stations in the system are ADA accessible, meaning the ramps, the elevators, etc. Now, our current proposal, as of this year, explicitly lists 6 stations, and then it includes another set of funding that mentions 10 under non-committal wording. The difference between 6 stations and 16 stations being made ADA accessible is the difference between 2 decades and 6 decades until full ADA compliance. We've already had 133 years since ADA was passed. ADA is actually older than I am. That's how long this project is taking, and that is not okay. The other thing I want to point out are all the transit deserts held in New York City. We pride ourselves on our transit system across the whole country, across the whole world, but far too often we look at Manhattan. And Manhattan is only 20% of New York City. When you look at a map of area by area, the places that are being well served by the subway, they are the areas with the lowest car ownership, and vice versa. We need to remember, only about 22% of households in Manhattan have a car. In Bronx, it's 40%. In Brooklyn, it's 44%. In Queens, it is 66% of households with a car. And in Staten Island, this rises up to 88%. Again, map out the subway deserts, and this maps exactly who's owning a car. There are large parts of Queens where the buses just aren't reliable enough, and they don't run frequently enough compared to the subway. And ultimately, I need you to realize the 2 million cars that are registered in New York City alone, that's around 10 million tons of carbon dioxide every single year those cars are driven. 10 million tons of carbon dioxide every single year, and that's only the gasoline. That's not even me accounting for the pavement, the rebar, the parking lots, everything else connected to that. And I have been in too many meetings where Big Oil and Big Auto literally lobby against public transit being seen as a viable climate solution because they know they can make more money off of innocent people by doing this. And because of all the racial inequities and the gentrification inequities in New York, this disproportionately seems to hit low-income folks of color who get pushed further and further out every darn time. And when we do this, when we build around cars, we prevent us from building new housing in walkable areas that can serve more people, that can prevent gentrification from pushing people out. I know subway expansions are expensive, but compared to dumping carbon in the air where it will last for thousands of years, where we have not even seen the full effects of the carbon there now, that is insane. We need more subways.
Thank you. The next speaker is Vincent Jenkins, followed by Peter Capps. The next speaker is Peter Capps.
Hi there, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm coming right now from Sheepshead Bay, and I'd just like to basically go through a quick bullet list describing slight modifications to the MTA capital plan and just recommendations towards this aforementioned plan. So for most of the points listed below, obviously federal funding for the project, at least partially or in full, should be secured. First bullet point. Making serious efforts to communicate with private developers such as Rethink Penn to reconstruct a Penn station per their lines over the governor's, which would potentially return the pre-1963 station house back to life. Now, this would obviously provide many spatial benefits, and it would also provide many, much more room across the station in order that people at the busiest transit hub in the Western Hemisphere have more room to walk around. Second point, the reopening of the lower level of the Bergen Avenue station located on the I&D Culver line so that express service may serve the station rather than bypassing the busiest station along the F Express line in Brooklyn. Third point, I noticed on the request for federal capital that the useful life of buses was around 12 years. If it is technically and realistically feasible, this life should be extended to about 15 years. Fourth point, I'm basically concurring with everybody at this point. Safety on the subway is a huge issue, and as such, tech upgrades for the NTTs in the system, entities being all trains that are not the R46 and the R68, should be retrofitted with cameras to provide evidence of serious crimes. Point 5. Local businesses should be encouraged to open shops inside of New York City subway stations. I noticed that this is already present in places like Borough Hall on the IRT and in West 4th Street on the IND systems. So I believe that this should be extended much more so that businesses can basically have, so that businesses can more or less not only operate in these stations and provide useful services to customers, but likewise to go ahead and make tax money for the MTA. I heard that you guys are about $300 million short of raising fares for the system, so this could be a useful way to avoid doing that. 6th point, contracting local cleaning firms to power wash floors and cleaning up stations. You guys already have your own services for doing this, but I believe that this would also go ahead and help local businesses and basically provide more community input into local stations and even making people a little bit proud of stations that they have as part of this great system. And point number 7, final point, tech upgrades for all existing NTTs in the system. Again, all trains that are not the R46 or R68s, to give announcements for what side the doors of the train will be opening at for the next
Please
station.
conclude.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is David Martinez, followed by Layla Law Gisco.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. I am from Brooklyn, New York, and I have been riding the subway for like years, and there needs to be some improvements that I get pissed off every time here that I have to go through, because one of the things I don't understand is on the weekends. Why is there no B train service on the weekends when I take that train every day, especially for passengers who have to get to 6th Avenue from DeKalb Avenue or along the Brighton line? I feel like there needs to be some B train service on the weekends at least, so that way you get service toward 6th Avenue instead of transferring at Atlantic Avenue, Barclays Center, or 34th Herald Square for the D train here. You need extra service along 6th Avenue on the weekends. I understand because of construction and everything else, but come on, why are you reducing service here? This is unacceptable of what you're doing to us as New Yorkers here, especially when you can't have the C train be extended to Ozone Park Leverett Boulevard instead of having 2 A trains going different directions. Like, why are you trying to confuse the passengers and the commuters to where they're going to, all right? Why can't you just be organized and just create an extension? And here's another thing I don't understand here. When a train is going express, why do you have to make a local stop after going express? Like I'm talking about along Queens Boulevard, where after Forest Hill, 71st Avenue, the E and the F start going local. Like, if you're an express train, you should remain express throughout the entire trip here. Let the local trains be extended. The M and the R need to be extended to at least, I'd say, Jamaica 179th Street or Jamaica Center. I don't understand what's the problem here. Why are you just so focused on taking our money away instead of improving service and adding service to us MTA customers that use the system every day? It is annoying, and I'm getting sick of it here. I just can't here, all right? And plus, anytime when we need help trying to get to some place where if they don't tell us specifically the full station name, we need better professional conductors to announce the full station names at all times, no matter what. Or otherwise, the passengers will get lost and they don't know where they at, all right? Because whether, no matter what train car you on, it's always important to hear the full station name, so that way the passengers don't get lost at where they're going to, no matter what time of day it is, okay? Add more service to the weekends, et cetera, and extend those trains even further, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Layla Law Gisco, followed by Montana St. Pierre.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Leila Logizico. I'm the chair of the Land Use, Housing, and Zoning Committee of Manhattan Community Board 5. Community Board 5 is home to Manhattan's two train hubs, Grand Central Terminal and Penn Station. Penn Station has been the subject of numerous conversations with the MTA as the facility is in critical need of improvements. While we are skeptical that the ESD-sponsored project known as the Empire Station Complex GPP will generate any of the funding needed for Penn Station, we were encouraged when we heard at a March 2022 MTA board meeting that MTA would aggressively seek federal funding for Penn Station. Penn Station is of great regional importance. We believe that large capital projects to upgrade and improve our transportation infrastructure should receive the maximum amount of federal funding such projects are eligible for. Penn Station is entirely missing from the book that was submitted and that we're testifying on tonight. While we understand that federal funding may come from discretionary FTA grants as well as from FRA, we are surprised to see that the MTA is not seeking any formula funding for Penn Station as part of this FTA apportionment and suballocation. We believe it is essential, given the large number of projects currently identified at Penn Station that fall under MTA's responsibility to seek formula funding. We would like to respectfully request that MTA addresses our question and provide us with an explanation as to why they are not seeking federal dollars from the FTA as part of formula funding at this particular juncture. We also take the opportunity of this hearing to respectfully ask MTA to provide with the public with an opportunity to better understand the status of the federal funding scheme and timeline for Penn Station reconstruction. Federal funding will be essential if we are serious about fixing Penn Station. We need to know that this funding is currently being sought by the MTA, and we need to know when it will be issued. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. The next speaker is Juan Castillo, followed by Joseph Morales.
Is this mic working? Excuse me. Anyway, I like to speak personally on my behalf. Review the projects I'm proposed. What I'm proposing is about the accessibility the accessibility for each MTA station that has elevators. That they should be double the accessibility compliancy. For example, you should double the accessibility at Brooklyn for Coney Island Stillwell Avenue. We will install 2 elevators from each the F and Q platform up to the overpass, as well as fixing the ramp on the D to make it fully gradually accessible. Also in Manhattan, we will install 4 elevators to each platform of the AC and E trains 42nd Street Port Authority bus terminal station. Also, to switch lines for the B and D train back to West End and Brighton lines, with B trains going along back to Coney Island on the West End line with new late night and weekend service. And for D trains going back to the Brighton line, while continuing to serve Stillwell Avenue, with sending Q trains turning at Brighton Beach. Also to revert some changes related to the 2010 service cuts to reinstate the V train and send the M back via the Nassau Street line through Bay Parkway, make it the Brown line again. I also propose that the MTA should discontinue BX15 Limited and bring back the BX55 as an SBS line to have it run 24/7 between Fordham Plaza and LaGuardia Airport, similar to the proposed BX50 Limited that was planned back in 2008, but never happened. Also, I also want to bring the idea of proposed Bronx network bus network redesign changes regarding some changes in the Bronx. It's in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. We're all local, Liberty, and SBS, and also as well as Staten Island. If you're interested in hearing them out, you can reply back to me in my email address at aceve14 at AOL.com. Just letting you know. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Montana St. Pierre.
Hello, my name is Montana St. Pierre. Thank you for having us tonight. And I would like to start out just by commending the agency for all of the difficulties it encounters maintaining the most robust, largest system in the country of public transportation, as having relied on public transportation in various other cities such as the BART, Muni in San Francisco, MTA in Boston. It is crazy just how much more accessibility this service provides to the residents of New York City and of the surrounding areas. But overall, there are definitely a few things I'd just like to bring up. It was pointed out earlier how the proposal for the ADA accessibility compliance, that are specific projects, but then there is the one project that has the budget of $700 million with the non-committal language. And I think it is important that this is money that is allocated to specific plans, because if there's not a plan now, at least one we're not able to see and that's not visible, it's hard to believe that any of these changes will come to fruition. And overall, the amount of money is, of course, quite staggering, and that is, of course, due to the nature of just the United States construction and inflation and all that. But it'd be great to see maybe some more non-traditional approaches to implementing these improvements in the future, especially with the communications upgrades, signaling, and the more physical construction projects with the ADA accessibility, such as we had when we consulted the deans of the Columbia and Cornell engineering schools to rapidly accelerate the L train tunnel rehabilitation. It'd be great to see some more exploratory, non-traditional approaches being introduced. And finally, just overall through all these projects, I noticed that there seems to be a lack of dedication to improving climate resiliency with these projects. It's great if we're able to implement all of these accessibility changes and signaling changes, but we need to make sure that they're going to be here to last and that we're able to handle all of the issues that keep arising, such as flooding, as we've seen in the past year, that can cripple this system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have reached the final two speakers on the list. After they have been called, we will call the names of the speakers who were previously called but did not speak yet. As we make our way through the list of speakers for the second time, those present who have not spoken yet will be given an opportunity to comment. If you miss your name being called or have joined the Zoom under a name that is different than the one you used when you signed up to speak, please identify yourself in the Q&A function. The next speaker is Joseph Morales.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to speak on a few proposals of the MTAs. One is to ensure, it's great that we're purchasing more electric buses, but I would really like to make sure that, and I mentioned this last year as well, but just to bring it up again, that they are distributed equitably in communities in need. In 2019, a daily news analysis found that 4% of the oldest RTS diesel burning buses in the fleet, in New York City's fleet, they made up 4% of New York City's fleet, but there were 20% of the buses coming out of the East New York bus depots. So I feel like I've seen these buses all over the city now, but haven't been to certain areas so much. So just want to make sure that happens. I feel like as far for ADA accessibility, it's great that we're pursuing making more ADA stations accessible. However, I feel like it'll really be nice if we prioritize stations based off of need as well. Like, for example, 168th Street, I'm not saying any station needs it more than others, but I feel like 168th Street on the one line should be prioritized because it's near a set of hospitals, as well as stations that it's harder to complete the same trip on train by bus, and stations that are, what was the other word? Stations that are just harder to complete the same trip by bus. And lastly, as part of station work, I would like to make sure that Omni machines I feel as if Omni machines, sorry, I'm stumbling upon my words. A lot of Staten Island politicians were upset that MetroCard vending machines were not in Staten Island railway stations, but yet were in every station in the New York City subway system. So please, when you guys install Omni vending machines this year, please install them in Staten Island Railway as well. A lot of delis are not open 24/7 in the area, and if you're coming out of, I'll make up an example here, say the Huguenot station. I don't know Huguenot, but any Staten Island Railway station, it may be hard to, if you need to, say, take a bus. If you can't get an Omni card and you don't have a credit card, it's going to be pretty hard to pay your fare. And circling back to the bus comment, I forgot to define what I meant by communities in need. Basically, communities that are more adversely impacted by vehicle emissions and ones with higher asthma rates. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jason Anthony.
Good evening, Sophie. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Reading upon the other capital projects, I could totally agree. Giving the ADA elevator at Parkchester is well needed. This could have come in a good moment for the Pelham line. All elevators are needed in a special moment, but we also need ramps in some stations, modernizing the fleet because some buses are getting old. Some of them break down sometimes. We could also mention station modernization. We could also mention elevators and ramps outside the 5 boroughs. We can mention up north in Metro North territory, up east in the Long Island Railroad territory, west of Hudson, in the Pascagoula Valley line, in the Port Jervis line. When Omni is introduced, in the Staten Island Railways territory, vending machines should be introduced first because I work in Staten Island, and Amazon workers, they often work late nights, and especially in the St. George terminal, there's several vending machines, and they should be introduced first. So this is a good plan, and all those previous speakers, keep in mind, we should support congestion pricing to support this plan, because without congestion pricing, this plan could fall into desperate hands. So without congestion pricing, this could end up into a debt fall. So that is all I have to speak for this round. Thank you, Sophie, for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you. At this current time, we're going to take a brief recess. Thank you. The current time is 6:58. We're going to call the two speakers that we called previously to see if they joined the Zoom. Vincent Jenkins and Jesse Figueroa. Okay, we don't have any further speakers, and neither one have joined the Zoom, and this concludes. The next speaker is Anita Lusek.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Aneta Luchak, and I am a public school teacher. So needless to say that I use the subway system every way to commute to and from work. And I'm just here to say a few brief words. I would greatly appreciate if these sessions could be held more often, and if they could be held on weekends so that more working people and hopefully students could attend the sessions on days when they're off. Possibly middays or early afternoons would be a great time to increase probably the participation numbers. I would like to ask that the time for speaking be increased from 3 minutes to 4, possibly 5 minutes, to allow for the ideas that I mentioned, to be, I guess, more elaborated on. I guess that's all I have to say. So good luck with your project, and I hope we'll see a great impact, on the system that we visit each and every day. Thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you. At this current time, we do not have any additional virtual speakers, and we exhausted the list for the in-person speakers. This concludes the public hearing. The current time is 7:02 p.m. Thank you for joining us.